So did you ever get called sir?
Oh, all the time.
Yeah.
You hear this voice? This voice is like this alto voice.
Yeah.
I got called sir all the time. When I was a flight instructor, I'd give push-ups. If
Yeah.
you called me sir, I'd be like, give me 10. Like people would drop all the time. Walking down the
Yeah.
hallway. And even in the T6, I think one time I had a student do push-ups on the wing. But it was cool. I mean, I wasn't, it was more of a fun thing, you know.
Yeah.
I remember I had one student, he got F-16s later on. I think I had him so flustered in the aircraft. He called me sir, and I yelled at him. I was like, "What'd you call me?" He was doing really well. And he goes, "Sorry, ma'am." And then the controller ATC was talking to him. Then he called the ATC controller ma'am, and then we all just started laughing. He was so flustered. He went F-16s. Good guy.
That's funny.
All Fire, No Smoke is our candid conversation as two military aviators sharing the unique experiences we've had in combat, reconnaissance, and demonstration flying.
Through personal stories, technical details, and laughter, we explore the challenges of balancing leadership, motherhood, professional life, all while offering inspiring insights for those who are trying to strike that work-life balance.
I'm Meryl Tangestal, retired Air Force Colonel. You guys might know me as the Dragon Lady. I flew the SH-60 helicopter in the Navy before switching over to the Air Force and becoming the first and only black woman to fly the U-2 spy plane. My last job was at the Pentagon, where I was the Director of Inspection for the Inspector General.
I'm retired Lieutenant Colonel Caroline Jensen. I go by the call sign Blaze. I flew the F-16 Fighting Falcon, better known as the Viper, in the Air Force during Operation Iraqi Freedom, and was later selected as the first female reserve officer to fly with the prestigious United States Air Force Air Demonstration Squadron, known as the Thunderbirds. My son also happened to be the first kid to ever get to watch his mom fly with an advanced jet demo team. All right, today we're talking about the real stuff, like getting called sir one too many times and how we handled that.
And we'll chat about what it was really like carving out a spot in combat aviation while getting into all the hilarious, awkward, and unforgettable moments that shaped us as aviators.
So strap in for episode 2 of All Fire, No Smoke. And if you ever fly a check ride with me, make sure that you don't call me honey. I forgot what I was going to say.
Let's talk about awkwardness.
Do you remember when the combat exclusion was lifted, where you were? Was that something on your radar, wanting to go and fly helicopters?
Yeah, I do remember probably before I graduated college in December of 94, and that summer I was at University of Maine, and I was checking out the branch of service, the Marine Corps. And at that time, they came up to talk to me where I was at, and they told me they were not accepting women as combat aviators at the time. But I knew that the Navy and Air Force at the time had that. So that took, for me, the Marine Corps out of the equation because I wanted everything to be available for me. So that's what I remember. I think it was 93, summer of 93.
Yep. I'm not trying to date you at
Oh,
all.
you've already done it, so it's okay. I'm just kidding.
No, I was in high school, and it was April 28th of 93, and I remember because I had a paper due on April 29th of 1993, and the paper was about what do you want to do after you graduate from high school.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd already been, since I was really young, like wanted to fly and really interested in the World War II history of the WASP, and seeing my dad fly helicopters, I wanted to be a military pilot, and after Top Gun, wanted to be a fighter pilot. And so I wrote this paper about that, and I turned it in. As I was writing out the final copy of this paper, the news was on, and they had the news flash from the Pentagon, and it showed the 3 women standing with the Chief of Staff of the Air Force, and him announcing, like, these are the first 3 women to fly fighters, as I was writing out that final draft of that paper. So everything that I'd always wanted that wasn't possible became possible, like, right when I turned that in. I was so excited to go and turn it in. It's like Ralphie with the Red Ryder BB gun and the Christmas story. And I turned it in. And And it was totally like, "You'll shoot your eye out, kid." Like, I got an F, I failed the paper.
Did you get
Yes.
really? That was out of spite.
Yeah, it was. My teacher just didn't see a world where women should be in combat or fly fighters, or maybe she just thought it was like some kind of
She thought
yeah, it was a female teacher. So I went in,
I,
I'm
I want
like,
I want names.
yeah. I went in, I was like, I talked to these cadets at the academy. I talked to pilots doing, women pilots, male pilots, fighter pilots, tanker pilots, everything. And she saw, I had truly done a great job researching it and, was really invested in the paper and what I wanted to do with my future. So she raised my grade from an F to a D instead. So
What's her name?
she has passed on. So, yeah.
From Wisconsin?
Yeah, up in Wisconsin. So, yeah, it was interesting, but there's like one of those
You know where she
examples.
resides now? She is laid to rest?
Yeah, she has been laid to rest.
Do you know where?
But it's one of those it's one of those things, where it's like you tell me I can't do something.
I would just say
Yeah.
you should take a pair of wings and just put that
Yeah.
in her sight.
Yeah.
Be like, I did it.
Yeah. I did go back to town a couple times and she just basically ignored me. Like I went back and talked to her class in my
That's
full cadet
rude.
uniform. Yeah.
So rude.
It was really interesting. But again, those people motivated me too. People were like, you can't do this.
She's in denial.
So, yeah. So it's pretty interesting being one of the first women, especially in like squadrons. So did you ever get called sir?
Oh, all the time.
Yeah.
You hear this voice? This voice is like, it's alto voice.
Yeah.
Although so I've taken voice lessons, I can go like high range. Like I have like a 3 octave or 3.5 octave range.
You just pick one.
But I mean, my normal talking voice is here. I got called sir all the time. When I was a flight instructor, I'd give push-ups.
Yeah.
If you call me sir, I'd be like, give me 10. Like people would drop all the time. Walking down the hallway. And even in the T6, I think one time I had a student do push-ups on the wing. But it was cool. I mean, I wasn't, it was more of a fun thing,
Yeah.
I remember I had one student, he got F-16s later on. I think I had him so flustered in the aircraft. He called me sir, and I yelled at him. I was like, what'd you call me? He was doing really well. And he goes, sorry, ma'am. And then the controller, ATC, was talking to him. Then he called the ATC controller, ma'am. And then we all just started laughing. He was so flustered. He went F-16s. Good guy.
That's funny. I've been guilty, and I don't think it's it's not like a masculine thing, like the sir, ma'am. It's just because everyone's a sir, and you're like the part of the like 1% of the women in the squadron, or the pilots in the squadron that are a woman. They're just used to saying sir, sir, sir. And there was one night in Iraq where I called up to the tower to talk to the SOF, the supervisor of flying, and a woman answers the phone, and they're like, hello. And this happened to me too, like, SOF, Captain Jensen. And they're like, is the SOF there? Because they assume it's going to be a man who answers the phone. So I had that happen to me where it's like, SOF, Captain Jensen, is the SOF there? SOF, Captain Jensen. And then I caught myself doing it too to someone else, another female pilot. So,
all right, I'll tell you one story. You two story. I just got out to Korea, and I was doing one of my first missions, and the intel brief officer came in, and he was super nervous. So nervous, so he came in to brief me. He walked in with his head down looking at the floor. He was a second lieutenant, and at that time I was a major. So was I even a major at the time? No, maybe I was still a captain. I don't remember. He sat down, he was nervous, and he didn't look at me in the eye. And he starts briefing me. He's still looking down at his paper. And he's like, sir, the intel brief is this. Sir, this and this. And I'm sitting there and I'm getting hot. Like I'm pissed off. Like I'm looking at him. He's not, no eye contact. There's the mobile and another pilot there, and they're all just dying because they could see.
the rage building.
All the rage was building. And finally he said, sir, one last time. I mean, it had to come out of his mouth between 5 and 10 times. I go, hey. And he pops his head up. I said, I'm a female. I said, you need to look at people when you talk to them. You have no situational awareness. From henceforth, you are NOSA. And he's like, he just sat there, and the other guys, like, they had to leave because they were just like, that was hot. So from that point on, his call sign was NOSA.
Yeah.
No situational awareness. So
that's a good call sign.
Yes, but he was a very nice man.
Poor lieutenant.
Poor lieutenant, yes.
It's scary when you go into those briefing rooms in Korea for the first time and you've got like kind of that horseshoe table and a bunch of people there to talk to.
The U2 was a small area he'd come in, but he did not look at me once. It was actually quite impressive that he did not look up, and I was like,
he's reading from script.
I was like, Lieutenant,
that's funny.
Get your life. So and then he would call me. So I guess the rumor had it that if I flew a U2 mission, the intel officers had all the pilots' names up because they would interact with us, and they would have my name, and underneath it, do not call her sir. So like they all knew like it was gonna go down because I would give them one, like if they call me sir, like, hey, I'm a ma'am, and they do it again, and I'd yell at them, and then they'd be quiet, and they're like, sorry, ma'am. So I had that reputation. Funny. Yeah.
Well, I flew a check ride. I was a T-38 instructor for my first assignment, and I got to be part of check flight. So we'd make sure at each phase, like people could pass to the next phase. And there was this young man who was going to a fighter guard unit. I don't remember his name, or which I think it was going to fly Eagles or something like that. And he was just nervous, like sweaty, breathing heavy. We like go out, we fly the mission. He does fine, like he passed it, but he could just tell he was like so relieved. And we ride those bread van, like the bus back from your row. They pick you up your row and take you back, and he's filling out the forms on the bus on the way back. And he was like, what was our flight time? And I was like, I had a 1.3. And he goes, oh, thanks, honey. And I was like, what? And this kid like looked up at me like completely mortified. Like I didn't even have to get mad because I literally thought he was going to jump out of the door and throw himself under the wheels of the bus.
Might have.
He felt so bad. And then the dumb thing that I did was, as I was debriefing him in the room, there were other instructors in there. We were the only thing debriefing. So everybody heard the story. So all the other instructors were giving me a hard time. They called me honey a couple times. But
I'm surprised his call sign didn't become honey.
And turns out his wife's name was Honey. I don't know if that makes the story worse or better. Probably not, but he just was so like glad that check ride was over.
That check ride was over?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I understand.
Don't call me honey.
Don't call me honey.
The 90s.
Yeah, it's a great time. Hip hop was created.
Right. I like some 90s country too. There's some good music.
Wasn't Billy Ray Cyrus like in the 90s?
Yeah, that's not one of my favorite 90s country songs.
Achy Breaky Heart.
That's right. But there were a lot of growing pains in the 90s for women in aviation and combat roles.
Yes.
So I think one of the things that I would always get asked about when I talked to students when I was, going into high schools every weekend to do, or every Friday to do speeches, they want to know, like, how did you go to the bathroom in the airplane? And it's usually extra difficult because your aircrew flight equipment or your life support shop was generally all men, and they're trying to, like, help you, or maybe they don't even think about it. So what's that like, especially in the U2? I don't even know how you take care of bladder relief in the U2.
So it's quite interesting. You talk to any U2 pilot, we will eventually talk about poop and pee within the first 15 minutes of a conversation. It usually de-evolves into that. Like, we're not ashamed to talk about it. Thank goodness there was a fifth female to go through the program. So there were the other four ahead of me. The first one was Troy Devine. Lovely lady, great lady. Her and her husband were U2 pilots. But I digress a little bit, but to actually pee in the U2, in the pressure suit, we had what's called a UCD. It's basically, for women, it's a pad.
Okay.
Like a feminine napkin that has a hose attached to it.
Okay.
So the whole concept is that hose is attached in your pressure suit, which is attached to a relief hose that goes out into the aircraft. And you have a receptacle that holds about I think it's a liter of urine,
How long are your missions?
9+ hours.
So that's
So
a
you
lot.
can, yeah, so you
Yeah.
can, that's a lot of pee, but you're
Yeah.
drinking a lot.
Yeah.
And sometimes you could fill that up and then you have to go to piddle packs. So for women, what we would do, we would increase the pressure by blowing up the suit a little bit. That would
Okay.
create a little bit of suction. And then you pee on the pad, and in theory, it would get wet, and then the hose would suck the urine out. That's great for the first 6 hours. And then 7, 8, 9, it becomes just a soggy,
Saturated.
wet mess.
Yuck.
And then I don't have the patience to pee slow because by that point I've gone through
Yeah.
4 or 5, nice bottles of water because you have to stay hydrated.
How do you do that? You just open your.
No, we don't open up.
How do you drink?
So we have a
In a
little, we have a little port,
Alright.
and then we have, it's basically, I wish I had a picture of it, probably insert picture here. It has a long tube. You just push it through your porthole and you. Same when you have tube food. So you have tube food with a port. You put it on the tube and then you put it in and have your pureed whatever, mac and cheese, caffeinated pudding, whatever it
That
is.
sounds disgusting.
It's actually pretty good.
Pureed mac and cheese.
Oh yeah, it's jazzy mac with caffeine.
What if you get like an eyelash in your eye or your face itches? You're just out of luck.
Sometimes you could take a probe and get it in your probe area and kind of scratch your nose.
Oh, okay.
But other times you just gotta suck it up. Or sometimes you'll have a crease in like where your boot is.
Oh yeah.
And that's like a hot spot. So you have to
Pinch.
it's torturous for the next
Yeah.
X amount of hours. But, in theory, so the UCD for women is a pad. For the guys, it's basically like a big old condom that's over there.
Yeah.
No square. So.
Just like not a catheter, I guess, but.
There is no catheter. Like people used to say, oh, you're getting catheter. Who in their right mind would have something stuck up in them for hours on end?
For 9 hours at a time.
For 9+ hours.
Yeah.
And then we got to take it out. Like, how is that happening?
Yeah.
I mean, people do it usually, but
Yeah.
no. So, that's how we pee.
Yeah.
No pooping in the suit.
Yeah.
Because that's an expensive bowel movement. You have to replace the suit.
That's an expensive bowel movement.
Yes, it's like $100,000 for a normal suit, $250,000 for a regular. So,
Yeah.
we have a plaque for those who have pooped in the suit called
Okay.
this is probably the only time I'll curse, the Strato Shitters.
Yeah.
And so there's a plaque even in the Heritage Room to this day that has those who have pooped the suit.
Is your name on it?
No.
Okay.
Ew, no.
That's the important question.
No.
Sometimes you can't help it 9 hours. So.
Yeah, but you have to learn how to.
Yeah.
Most people learn how to what triggers them.
Eat the right foods.
Eat the right
Yeah.
foods. I used to have a lot of high fiber, but I was also the pilot. This is probably too much information. They would integrate me in the suit. You have to be on 100% oxygen at least 1 hour prior to takeoff. And I would get on 100% oxygen, and then I would have them make sure that my pressure suit was unzipped, and I would walk with my canister in the bathroom and
go right before you.
Yeah.
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 That's smart.
Is it really? Because I'm like in the suit and I'm trying to get
No.
toilet paper.
At least you're not in the jet.
Well, no, but yeah.
Yeah.
So I was an urban legend for a long time until someone said to me, Meryl, do you go to the bathroom before they close you up? I go, yeah.
Yeah.
They're like, how do you do that? I said, very carefully.
Yeah.
Like you don't want any trails or anything on you.
The first time I tried to use a piddle pack, the life support shop gave me men's piddle packs.
Oh.
Which are meant for people who have like an exterior hose out of their body to go into the pack. So,
and they're no square.
Yeah.
Their plumbing's different.
And it was terrible. We hit a tanker twice, and the one had like a little sponge in it. So I tried to pee in the sponge a little bit. I ended up peeing on the seat, and that was before the first tank. So for 2 hours, all I thought about was my poor crew chief that had to help me out of this wet seat. And yeah, so that was terrible. And then when we were deploying to Iraq, I did not volunteer for the pond crossing from Hill to Iraq, but I was what a opportunity of a lifetime. You get to go fly 9 hours around the world, but in the F-16, when you deploy, it's pretty cool, but I didn't know how to use a piddle pack. So I got chosen to be one of the, I don't know, I think we took 12 jets over, so I was one of the 12. And we were at Hill, and we would do hot pits where you fly, you land, and then, you can have a sandwich, whatever. You're
Yes.
sitting in the hot pits. And then I was like, I'm going to be at, 0 knots and 1G and try to figure out how to use the pedal pack. And we had to modify our suits on our own back then. Now the zipper goes longer, so you have easier access
You can
to
zip
your
on the
area.
back.
Yeah, we put like zippers in, and it was illegal. The shoot shop wouldn't do it for you because it was an illegal modification. So we would rip the zipper out of the leg and then sew them in ourselves. So I'm in the end of the runway. I've already got my gas, and I'm trying to figure out how to use a pedal pack before I go fly like a 10.5 hour mission over the Atlantic Ocean. And I'm sitting there, and I'm like, the seat in the F-16 is really high, so you lower it all the way down and you push yourself up, and so you're kind of doing a squat. And I got this down here, and I kind of sense this little motion out the corner of my eye, and I look over, and there's like 2 male crew chiefs just like staring at me. And I can read their lips, and he goes, "She's trying to go pee." And I give him the finger, and I go, "Turn around."
I would have been mad.
Yeah, so that was me learning how to pee, and then I got really good at it. So I would go every time before we took off. It was like part of my pre-flight ritual, but it's funny because they don't always give you something like to clean up with. So like, hey, can you get me like a wiper, like a little Kleenex or something? Add that in there, and like guys were kind of like nervous about it in the flight shop, like the aircrew flight equipment.
Why?
But by the end, there was I think he was a tech sergeant by the time I left, and he was like, "Ma'am, we got you this, and I got you this," and there's like all these different things that you could try, and it was really cute. I was like, "Good, like
It's a learning curve.
go forth and prosper, and help all those other women that you're gonna have in the future."
Yeah, and the U2, we have a whole squadron that does like all the physiological stuff. So they maintain the suits and all that. So typically when I was deployed, if I had a long mission, I mean, my underwear it had pee, like,
Yeah.
or sometimes it would, if typically for me, the tube didn't fail. But if it did, it's backing up into your boots. And
Oh no.
I
It's
didn't
such
really
a
have that.
glamorous job,
It
isn't
is.
it?
It's you
Being
feel
an
so
Air
pretty.
Force pilot.
You
Yeah.
feel so clean and fresh after.
Yeah.
And then we all used to use a lot of talcum powder by Johnson and Johnson.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, great.
It's good times.
Yeah, they have a lawsuit now.
Yeah. Yeah, seriously.
You've had a lot of difficult times
Mm-hmm.
getting up to where you were, but let's talk about like the flight phase. So for you, any part, whether it was training, flying F-16s, what was the most difficult part for you?
So one of the most difficult parts was when I was in the F-16. I was a T-38 instructor first, and so I did that for 3 years. Gave me a ton of airmanship, and being an instructor, you learn a lot more watching your students make all those mistakes, and you know what they're going to do before they do it, and it helps you become a better pilot, I think, too. But then I went to Korea for 1 year, and since I had already had a ton of time in the F6 or in the T-38, I had like lower weather category, and the weather was always horrible in Korea, so they would call Blaze out of the studying in the vault to come and fly because the weather was like 300-foot ceiling and 1 mile, and it's not fun to fly in.
It was terrible.
Yeah, it was always bad there, and you're landing at minimum. So
and they send you 2 pilots the first mission, Korea. It's
thanks for the
hey, thanks. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and you're coming from California, where the weather's always great, and now you're flying like with the minimum. Yeah, so that was no fun, but then I got to upgrade because I had all that previous experience. I was only there 1 year, and I made it to flight lead, but I had other top off training I had to do to finish my 4-ship flight lead upgrade, and there was certain missions that are like multiple aircraft flying against each other, and then you had to do it at night. And they're all like great training, very important, very complicated missions and hard to lead. But the problem was that the F-16 was going through an upgrade where they were putting in color displays. So the little TV screens we looked at in the cockpit used to be green and black, and they changed them to color.
Okay.
And we got a helmet mounted cueing system. We got something called Link 16, so you can see a bunch of other players.
Yes.
But what that meant was that we they throttled way back on our flying. So they had a squadron down range, like a squadron flying in Iraq. One whole squadron was in the depot getting all these upgrades done, and then one squadron of jets was being shared by like two squadrons of pilots plus like all the other pilots on base who were like attached doing other like staff jobs. So by the time I was doing these really complicated missions, I had only flown like once in the last month or 3 times in the last 60 days, and all of that was waived. So it was hard, and you'd try to do sims to get yourself prepared. But man, I remember I was at Hill Air Force Base and flying back in a snowstorm at night. You're like, the last thing you want to do is like lose track of your airspeed and get too slow, and then you've got like a 4-ship behind you. um, and that one was kind of tricky. I ended up like for a nanosecond I got a little slow, and it didn't cause too much problems. But um, there was one mission I flew, and it was against like an F-22, and the guys dropped down low. Well, the F-16 radar was fairly limited, but especially when you're going against a low observable aircraft and you look down, and I'm like, as I'm trying to convert on them visually, I don't have them visually yet, and my radar just broke lock on them. So
Oh,
like, and I'm on an upgrade ride, and I haven't hardly flown in the last 3 days. So, and you want to be, especially as a female pilot, like everyone's looking at you. Yeah. And if someone's like, oh yeah, I met, Meryl, they don't say she's a cool chick or we loved having her in the squad. And they'd be like, she's a really good pilot. Like anytime someone told me, do you know this girl, this woman, it would be then a testament to whether or not she was a good pilot. Yes. And if it was like, if you know this bro, then he's a freaking great guy.
Right.
And not his piloting skills. So I felt really, it was hard because I passed, but it was hard to do it, and I didn't do it to the caliber that I wanted to. But it was also because of all the upgrades with the airplane.
Right. You don't want anyone to have a reason to judge you for something. And I think as women, we're very sensitive to that. You don't want to have a bad flight. So if you have a bad flight, I think you take it hard, and I've taken it hard as well. Sometimes I've taken it hard in the squadron, and people pull me aside like, "What's your deal?" And I'm like, going through my phase. Just leave me alone. I'm focused.
Yeah,
I got this.
Well, and for all those pilots out there and future pilots out there, coming from a Thunderbird pilot who people, I think they're like, oh, you're perfect. As many times as we repeated things and as close as we got, and the same jets, the same people, the same shows over and over again, there's no such thing as a perfect flight. No such thing. And you always have to just like, I messed that up, whatever, put it behind you and just make the next event in your flight the best possible.
Yes.
So.
Speaking of Korea, yes, hard flying. When I started flying the U-2 and do missions out there, my first 4 missions, the sensor broke and I had to come back through the weather with my pressure suit still intact. So trying to land with the helmet and everything going and the gloves, because typically when you're below, 45,000 feet, you could kind of, well, you don't open up, but you could kind of take your gloves off and you can kind of, I couldn't do any of that. And I remember, like you said, I'm sweating. I'm just working hard in the aircraft, landing. And then they're like, okay, we can't fix the sensor. We got to now transfer you to another aircraft. So you have to get the PSD personnel to come in, take you off oxygen, put you in a little box, and then move you to another aircraft. And I'm sweating and I'm just dripping everywhere. Take off again, and now you're up at altitude freezing. Yes. Because now you have cooling system, everything's great. And I was like, this is not cool. Like the first 4 flights, I'm like, guys, I can't do a 5th flight when I have to come back. It's not feeling good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't. So those were difficult times. But flying's fun in Korea. It's challenging.
Yeah, for sure.
It is. I didn't like when there was thunder showers. We had to navigate. Well, we couldn't really navigate. We didn't have weather radar, so we had to rely on the control.
Did you guys you wouldn't fly with night vision goggles ever, or did you?
Mm-mm.
So you talking about that, I remember times in my career where I was like seeing something and I'm like, nobody else in the world gets to see this. And on night vision goggles, I especially remember like vividly over Iraq, you could see like shooting stars through the night vision goggles, and they're, it's like 2 toilet paper tubes, so you can only really see like
Yeah.
this much in front of you. But I remember, first of all, flying through cumulonimbus on a tanker at night is terrible because the wings of a KC-135 flap like a bird, and you're trying to stay on, and you have your goggles up to see the boom, but you can't see at night with the lighting within the weather in IFR. So you have to put them down to see it, because then you can see at least like the flashes through the clouds. It's just
Right.
like pretty heinous. But I remember watching like these amazing thunderstorms like up north in Turkey and over in Iran and stuff, and shooting stars, and you're in a combat zone and you're supporting these guys on the ground, and it's like, man, nobody gets to see this kind of stuff, but it'd be so cool to watch thunderstorms through your night vision goggles.
That'd be cool. I've never done
Yeah.
that. So when I flew helicopters, I can use night vision goggles, but we didn't use them for the missions that we did. So typically we were FLIR, or my second deployment we were South America. So we had other special mission sets that we did. So that would have been cool.
Yeah. So you started
Yes.
out flying helicopters in the Navy. What made you transition to the Air Force? You just
So
like got your senses, came to your senses, and
no,
decided on a better service. You
no.
like nicer facilities.
Hold on, not quite. Helicopters. First of all, I love helicopters. I always say they're hella cool, but they're helicopters. It's just a different type of flying, and especially in the Navy on the back of the boat. So I got to land on just about.
I want to hear about what it's like to land a helicopter on a
Oh,
boat.
yeah. So landing on the boat is, um, I've landed on every type: Marine Corps amphibs, tankers, carrier, cruisers, frigates, destroyers. Um, the SH-60 Bravo, anti-submarine aircraft, anti-submarine warfare, the search and rescue. We also had Hellfire missile. At that time, Penguin missile was when it was around. We can FLIR, we can light up targets. So we could do, air to ship type attacks, light attacks. Like we didn't have a whole bunch of weapons. We can also drop torpedoes. So we were a plug and play system. So, you can have torpedoes one day, you can have, FLIR and Hellfire next day. So every day was different. And the cool thing about the H-60, it had a RAS system. So carrier guys, they do carrier landings. Helicopters do similar the same. The RAS system is a probe that comes out from the middle of the aircraft. And
What does RAS stand for?
RAS,
Sorry.
Recovery, Assist, Secure, and Traverse System. So basically the probe on the ship, they have a trap. And the H-60 has a probe that comes down. And it can come down in this trap, and the trap closes it.
Okay.
So it's used to maneuver the helicopter in and out of the hangar. And it's also used for if the sea state is like 4 or 5, where the ship is just bucking, you can use the RAS system to clamp down, hold it in place while the ship is moving like that. And in order for that to happen, you have a cable that comes from the ship. You have a bunch of fire support guys. 2 of them come out, take the cable from the ship, connect it to the cable to the helicopter.
While you're
doing all this,
wow.
They get out of the way. You put tension on the RAS system, the tension on the cable. You maneuver the aircraft over, and they use about 4,000 pounds of force to actually help maneuver the aircraft down.
Like reel you in like a fish.
Yes. So
Yeah.
it's like it's dangerous for the hookup men on the ship because they could get wrapped around your neck. They could fall off the
Man.
flight deck. It's dangerous. At that time they got paid like an extra $120 a month.
Worth it.
Yeah, if
Not
you're
really.
an E1, E2, like
Yeah.
that's like, yeah, that's good money. But like I'm like, you guys are,
Yeah.
mad props to you for what you do. So I liked the H-60 because we did all those things, and we did, night quals and did landings like that. So it was I don't know, it was just fun. It was more fun than I thought it would be, and I mean, I just learned a lot just about you know aircraft operations out there.
What was the max sea state you could land on a?
Sea states of five
Okay.
is so we would
I can't
rest.
imagine the runway just raising and lowering 5 feet on me.
Yeah, so I think the worst sea state I've ever been is probably like about a four. And it doesn't feel good. I mean, everyone's throwing up on the ship.
Oh
It's
man.
just, it's miserable. The coolest things I've ever done is do carrier ops. Um, the carrier battle group is going in one direction and they're booking it going, um, in 20 knots or so. And we're flying to do some type of, I don't know, we were trying to get a part or something. And the ship wouldn't turn into the wind because usually the ship
Mm-hmm.
could turn into the wind for you and you can land. It makes it easier. And they were like, nah, you need to come up and fly. So we're beating feet, and they're like, hey, we can't have you go on the other side because we have other ops going on. We want you to come across the bow of the ship and then come in and land. So it was
Wow.
kind of fun.
So why'd you leave all that amazing carrier ship
Um,
flying and decide to go to the Air Force?
because I still wanted to be an astronaut, and I love flying helicopters. But then I went back to the fixed wing world and became a T6 T-34 instructor.
Okay.
So what I would have done after that is gone back to the helicopter community and become a OIC officer in charge. But I didn't. That wasn't the path I wanted. I wanted to go higher, and so when I was at Moody Air Force Base training Navy and Air Force students, my boss at the time, he was like, "You should come over to the Air Force, maybe fly F-117s, B-52s, B-2s, whatever's around." And he said, U-2s. And my boyfriend at the time, who's eventually became my husband, he was like, U-2 sound cool. And I started looking into it. And I go, U-2 community, I like what they do. High altitude flying, reconnaissance, similar to what we did in helicopters. I flew out there in the T6, checked out the community, really liked them. They were really cool people. And I said, this is where I want to go.
Yeah.
I want to hang out with them. So that's what I did.
So how often were you like, how often did you have other women in your squadron? And especially since we were kind of came in the 90s, like how often were you the only
Oh,
one? How often did you have, what was it like when you finally had another woman in the squadron, if you did?
so when I went to flight school, there were a handful of women, maybe somewhere between 6 to 8. At that time, there were 5 women of color. I was the only one to complete flight training.
Oh, wow.
The other two of them were medically disqualified. I think they both blew their eardrums out, and the other two just didn't make it. Then when I got to the Hilo community, there were less than 5. There were me and another female that when we graduated advanced training, went to the H-60. 2 of us ended up at HSL 48. I wasn't particularly fond of her. We deployed in our first deployment together as 2 helicopter second pilots. We just didn't get along very
Yeah.
well. She wasn't the nicest of personalities.
Yeah, that happens.
And never, it's one of those things where sometimes you don't gel with people. And it's not
Hmm.
because, like, just because we're females doesn't mean, like, well, we're going to be buddies. No,
Yeah.
So I was more friends with the other male who was another helicopter second pilot. Like we were tight. We were like brother and sister. We graduated together.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were pretty tight at that time.
Yeah.
And so um then when I went on my second deployment as an aircraft commander, I took another young lady with me and she was okay.
Yeah.
I think I was a bit hard on her. She was imagine me as a Gen Xer dealing with a millennial.
Yeah.
So I was probably a little bit no nonsense, and maybe she couldn't
Yeah.
handle that much. And I'm like, dude, you're a good pilot. I want to see the best of you. I mean, she was
Yeah.
really good. So
And that's interesting too, that mentorship, because it's pretty rare for women to women, and you want to help people out. And I did a speaking engagement at Maxwell Air Force Base, And one of the questions was, what did you do to make, what changes did you make to make things better for all the women after you? And I'm like, I just had to not freaking fail, man. Like, I need to get through training and, not piss anybody off, not do anything like super terrible. It's just like we were running at full speed, and I know, like, and I was not the first. A lot of times I was the only, and I just wanted to make sure I was not going to be the last.
Exactly.
So it was really interesting. Well, what did you do? Like, what did you introduce? Like, I just had to like figure out how to sew my own zipper and to, modify things to make it fit me at the time without like having somebody confiscate my illegally modified flight suit and just, get through. So I'm happy things have changed a lot
Yes.
now. And I appreciate women like you who are just a little bit ahead of me, the first ones going into combat, and all those women before us too who were flying combat missions
Right.
and not getting credit for it.
Exactly.
Yeah. To make things change in 1993 so that we had everything open to us.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I don't mind being the first. I just don't want to be the only, and that's very, very, very true. And it's funny because if I see another female, I get really excited, but then I go, I'm like, what type of person are you? Or if I see a person of color, I get excited. Like, I'm like, yes. But then I go, like, what skills do you have?
Yeah.
Because sometimes I want to make sure I say this correctly. Sometimes there's not many of us, and those that are working hard look good, but then those who struggle, which should be, everyone struggles at certain points, but it's highlighted more.
Yeah.
And I remember as I got more senior, especially when I became like a flight instructor, if at Moody Air Force Base, if there was a Navy person that was going through the program, because they were in the minority because it was an Air Force base, and we had 25 Navy students going throughout the year, or if it was a person of color in particular, or a woman, I would try to fly with them. I didn't care what flight they were in. I didn't care where they were at. I would go into, and I'd be like, hey, let me get on the flight schedule. Hey, are they going off wing? Are they going off? Or they have to fly with someone else? Let me fly with them. And one of the reasons why I wanted to do that, because if there was any problems, I just wanted to make sure I would be able to mentor them and help them or guide them or say like, hey, you're doing something wrong. And I would do this for all students, but in particular, those who stood out the most, because I knew what it felt like to be alone in a sea of people.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, there were other students, if they were white males. I remember I flew with one student who was struggling, and I remember he was he failed the ride with me. He hooked the ride, which is a failure. And we were talking, and as I'm talking, I could see like, the emotional stuff start building up, and I'm looking at him like, I was like, get up right now and go in this office. And he goes, what? I'm like, go in the office. And he goes in there, and there's tissues, and I give it to him, and he like just breaks down. He like freaks out. He's like, I'm gonna quit, and I'm gonna do it. I hate this. I've never failed in my life. And then I was like, I just looked at him, let him go, and I'm like, you done? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, STFU. I was like, this is why you're not gonna quit. I said, this is the first time you failed. Congratulations. Welcome to the club. We all freaking fail. Like, you try to perform at this high level, and I'm just like, hey, you failed. It's okay. You're gonna do another ride with me. These are the things you're gonna improve, and you're gonna improve tomorrow. I said, but you're not gonna quit. Like, you can tell me now you're gonna quit, and I will lie and say that you didn't say that, and you're gonna fly with me tomorrow, and it'll be better. And so it was. He's like, he collected himself. He's like, okay. I'm like, all right, just go back, and because the Air Force likes to keep students for 12 hours a day, which is insane to me. It's dumb. Anyway, that's my commentary on flight training. And so next day we fly, and he went from being the lower third of the class to coming up towards like, mid-pack, a little bit higher. And he didn't he didn't get fighters, like he didn't, but he was so happy that he selected, and at the end, of course, selection party, people are drinking and stuff. He's like, I'm gonna pay it forward,
Oh,
and I was like, yeah, you better.
yeah.
Yeah, I was like, have fun, don't kill yourself.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, I would do that with just all those students, all those who, and that was a good story. I mean, there was some
Yeah.
that I flown with. I was like, yeah, um,
Yeah.
yeah, this is the end of the road for you.
Yeah.
What?
We're not done. No.
We're not done. What do you mean we're not done?
Well, I was going to say the only person I ever had cry on me was also a male student.
Oh yeah.
And I had to like take him out of the room, and it was like quivering lip, like it was really
Ugly cry.
Yeah, ugly crying, just like, good Lord,
Yeah.
pull it together. But I think we all just need someone to believe in us, right? Even
Yes.
in pilot training, whatever. We just like a little bit of encouragement goes a long way.
Oh yeah, and I think in anything that's at that level, you have those moments where you cry. You just try not to do it.
Yeah, do it at home.
Like helicopter training, my first failed check ride. I did something really stupid and I knew I failed. But I went in the bathroom and I had it out for like 5 minutes and I'm like, you better suck it back in and walk out there like, all right, I failed.
Yeah.
It's okay. I'll be ready tomorrow. And then the next day they're like, why are you here? I was like, because I made a stupid mistake. I'm good at flying helicopters. And they're like, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, we all have that moment. You're no different. Yeah, everyone hits that point, it just happens.
Yeah.
Shoot, I'm still hitting that point.
Seriously. Yep.
What point are you hitting right now that you're like not doing well at and you're like, dang.
Well, we can tease later episodes, but I mean, I think as a parent every day, you're like, man, I could have done that better. Could have done that better. Could have been there more. Could have, and we just need to give ourselves grace, whether it's in, at home or at work, and trust, learn, always be improving.